Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yep.
President Daly. Here. Trustee Henderson.
Here.
Trustee Schwartz and Champlin are absent.
Oh, Evan's not here yet. Okay.
But Evan's coming, right?
Yeah, he's coming. Okay, so we're good. We got quorum. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you guys for coming. Just before we start, I just wanted to make a quick mention. As everyone probably knows, and I'm sure everybody does know because this was a big deal, last week, March 2nd, Betty Budney had passed away. Betty was a long-time Phillipstown councilwoman, first one, I believe, first councilwoman. Served 25 years, president of the Lions Club, and a huge fan of Haldane. Huge, with a capital H. I won't get into all her accomplishments and stuff. There's a couple of great obituaries and articles in the PCNR and Phillipstown.info on her that gives all the accolades. But I really just wanted to kind of acknowledge her, and she was a big part of this community and really was a very unique individual. And she was just a great person. 2 years ago when we did the fundraiser for the New Orleans trip for the high school kids, she was having back problems and health problems, and I remember she called up and says, "You got to come to my house and pick up the boxes of New Orleans stuff that we have." So my wife and I drive over, and she comes barreling out of the house with this huge box of beads and whistles and Mardi Gras stuff, and she's like this, and she yells, "Joe, get the door." She says, "For Haldane, anything for Haldane. Get those kids out to New Orleans." And that just kind of sums up Betty Budney. She's a great person. So, just wanted to acknowledge her from Haldane's perspective. Huge loss, a legend. And, with 3 older daughters, if they could grow up with her spirit, they'd be doing all right. So if we could just get a moment of silence for Mrs. Budney. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Betty. On a lighter note, tonight we have the girls' varsity basketball team and the boys' varsity basketball team both playing at Mount St. Mary's in Newburgh. In the state regionals, my understanding is the girls are in overtime.
They are.
Dr. Bowers, do you have an update?
Well, we have down by 1 with 6 seconds to go.
Ooh, okay. So let's hope we have some good news on that front, and then the boys follow. So my guess is half the town's in Newburgh right now cheering on the Blue Devils.
Yeah.
And with that said, we have some special guests tonight. Jillian Thorpe, Director of Butterfield Library in Cold Spring, and it looks like we have the whole board.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. Turn it over to Mrs. Thorpe. Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. Thank you. It's very weird to walk in here for different reasons, but thank you, and thank you for putting us on at the beginning of your agenda. We appreciate that. I am here tonight with my library board. I have Judy Meyer, our board president, Dennis Gagnon, our vice president, Pam Marcano, our secretary, and Mike Larocca, our treasurer. We are here tonight because we want to address you regarding our use of New York State Education Law 259. This law allows an association library like Butterfield to petition to have a proposition put on a school district's ballot. So that is what we are going to do. As you know, our lawyers have been speaking, and I believe that they're in agreement with the facts around the law and the procedures that we need to take going forward. I think you also have a copy of the petition. If not, we had sent it to him this morning. We will be circulating those, collecting signatures over the next week, and we will submit them to the Board of Education prior to your next meeting. As required by law, all you need to do at that point is accept the petitions, and it requires no other work on your part. It also does not mean that the library has any say in your budget or vice versa. Does not link us in any other way other than we're putting a proposition on your ballot. That said, the library board knows that the community is going to have questions regarding this, so we have set up already two public meetings. The first one will take place on Wednesday, April 22nd at 7 o'clock. The second one will take place on Sunday, April 26th at 3 p.m. If somebody can't make either one of those times, please feel free to reach out to me or any one of the board, and we will arrange a better time for you. In addition to that, we will also have a page on our website pertaining to all the information about the vote, including frequently asked questions and similar. So at this point, I guess I would just like to ask if there are any questions from any of you.
Board, and just Jillian had sent to us prior a copy of Education Law Section 259, which is on our board docs page. So you can actually download it right there, and it's actually written in English, which is contrary to most education law. And it really explains what the do's and don'ts are and what the school district's responsibilities are, which are virtually almost non-existent. So I encourage everyone, if you have an interest, to read that before you go to one of their public hearings, which would probably be helpful just to understand the context. Any questions from the board, guys? Our attorneys have spoken, and I guess they're completely on the same page. The only question I think that the school district had, or I had, and we all probably had, was, and I know you know the answer to this, and we all do, but for the public, there was some question as to does this have any impact or effect on the property tax rebates that the taxpayers get because the school stays under the cap. My understanding is there's no correlation at all.
Exactly, there is none.
Okay, so I just wanted to reiterate that we're all on the same page, that that's the case, and that the public knows that that won't have any effect on this either way.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll wait to hear your...
We'll keep you informed
Yep.
as the process goes, and if you have any questions that do come up, reach out to us or to Robert Schofield, our lawyer. And we look forward to, working on this with you. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you guys for showing up and participating. Appreciate it. Okay.
And the girls lost.
Ooh.
So now we'll root for the boys. Hope that they make it through.
Great season, though.
Yes, it was a wonderful season.
Okay.
They played
Thanks,
hard.
guys. Thanks, Joe. Yep. Thank you. Come on, Pam. You're welcome to stay and relive your old... I know you miss board life.
I do tremendously.
Okay, so I will turn this over to Dr. Bowers and Ann Dinio for the next step, which is going to be budget.
So, sorry. Do you want me to do anything over there?
I'll turn the lights whenever
Okay.
you're ready.
I'll move aside. So what we're going to be presenting to you this evening, what we're going to be presenting to you this evening is basically two budgets. We're going to have Budget 1 and Budget 2, and we'll be explaining all the parameters of the budgets to you. One is a budget that's very close to the amount of funding that we presently have available, with just a little more, which means if we get a minimal amount of state aid, we can go with one of the budgets. The second budget, there's a little bit greater of a gap, but we also feel that that's very much within our sights, and we're hoping that that's the direction we go. And from the sounds of the information that came from Albany today, it looks like the Assembly has submitted their budget, and it is actually about $800,000 higher than the highest budget that was submitted by the governor. So it looks like it certainly is not the least amount. Hopefully it's north of the highest amount presented by the governor, and we'll hope to see that occur. So we'll see how that plays out. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think we're good. Thank you. Okay, so as Dr. Bowers pointed out, tonight we're going to present two proposals, and they're based on the presumption that we will be getting, we don't know what we're getting as far as state aid goes. There's one proposal that's going to include everything that we've been talking about during the educational rationale up to this point, and one with reduced enhancements that would reflect some state aid, but not as much that would be required to fund the entire all the enhancements. So if you recall, this is a recap of a previous slide. There are budget development parameters that the board requested during budget development. One is to stay within the tax cap, to opt out of the TRS contribution stabilization program that we opted into last year that helped to avoid over $300,000 worth of budget cuts. We are going to visit this at a later time. It is reflected in the budget development, but the TRS rates have now dropped below what the stabilization rates are. So at a later time, I can present more information to the board. It's not a matter of opting out, but when to opt out and what would be the ideal time for the district to opt out. Other budget parameters to reduce the appropriated fund balance amount, to fund depleted reserves without leaving educational holes, to continue staff development in relation to the strategic plan, keep pace with technology, and expand and improve website communication. So both proposals, as I mentioned, include enhancements that were presented at previous board meetings. One at February 3rd, where Michael Tuardi and I presented the support segments of the budget, and on February 21st, where the instructional segments were presented. So the enhancements and additions that are in proposal number one, which is all inclusive. Now, I don't like to read slides to you, but these are important enhancements, so I'm going to go over each one. The building condition survey, it's mandated by the state ed department. It does cost $35,000. It's a 5-year plan. Districts are required to do it. We will get reimbursed for that fee in the following year. So our 16-17 state aid will include the reimbursement for what we're going to expend. We do have to put it in our budget, however, and fund it, and then get reimbursed the following year. Staff development, those are targeted institutes for teacher development that were presented during the educational rationale part 2. Possible bubble class, the enrollment for kindergarten is up, or projected to be up at this time of year in relation to last year. Sure, please do.
Okay, so with this bubble class, we are watching very carefully the numbers of students coming into our kindergarten class, and at this point, at this moment, we're okay with the 3 sections. If we go too much higher, we're at 64. If we go beyond 66, we're looking at some possible supplemental instructional support for our kindergarten class. And we're in conversation. We're not sure if we're not necessarily looking for a 4th section of kindergarten. What we are potentially looking for and what we're hoping to hire would be somebody who is a literacy specialist and a special educator. And at times we could have the 3 classes have fluid grouping, so there would be a 4th section of instruction, especially in the literacy and the math blocks, and giving support services for kids coming in that need the additional instruction. There are a number of students that have received preschool CSE services, so we feel a special educator literacy kind of consultant or teacher would be the most appropriate. If we, within this scenario, if we don't need the fourth section or the additional supplemental help in just kindergarten, we would like to keep this piece in because we are down one reading specialist, and we feel that this is one of the areas that we drastically need to improve and enhance. So we're hoping, unless something major happens, that this position remains in, and it depends on the number of kids in kindergarten, if it would be primarily a kindergarten situation or it would be one that would be primary, which would be K1 and 2.
And Diana, just
Yep.
a question. So it's not, even though it might not be called the bubble class, it's still the same amount of money that we're talking about?
Yes,
For
it's
that position?
right.
Okay.
The next item is to restore the physics position to 1.0 full-time equivalent. If during this current year, that was reduced to a 0.6 through some budget cuts. We are feeling that loss, so increasing the educational opportunities by restoring that position to a full-time equivalent. Potentially or partially restore the home and careers position by 0.2. That was reduced to a 0.4 position for this year, and putting back some educational opportunities for the students, increasing that back up to 0.6. Increasing co-curricular options. There are some clubs and extracurricular activities that the high school has requested. I don't know, Dr. Bowers, if you wanted to elaborate on that or not, or.
Yeah, there were 3 different clubs that have, for the last couple of years, have been in kind of a trial basis that will be coming up for into stipend positions this year. And all 3 have met the criteria to show the enthusiasm and the energy necessary in order to be considered a club for Haldane.
Contingent coaching stipends to allow flexibility based on participation.
We have been finding, one of the things you're going to hear a lot about as we enter the summer and into next year is we have asked the Director of Athletics to give us ranges or tipping points when the number of students who sign up for a certain sport, when it's just too much for just one coach. And we are looking at putting in the equivalent of 3 part-time or assistant coaches into the budget for next year. So and that's 1 per season. So if the numbers exceeds the tipping point, we would then hire an assistant coach. Or we would hire a separate coach, so there could be team A and B who rotate through if it's a modified, or if it's necessary to hire an assistant. The funds are in there. And this year we had a number of groups that really did exceed the tipping point. And so we were trying to figure out where to pull funds from in order to hire assistant coaches. And this will make it a lot cleaner and easier next year because we already have the funds available for this use. So each type of sport has their own level or their own numbers, and that will be included within the coaching handbook and the student handbook next year.
Next item, a peace officer for $35,000 for security. Again,
So we have been throughout the year talking about reinstating either a resource officer, a student resource officer, or a student peace officer from the Putnam County Sheriff's Department. And the SRO program existed in Haldane for a period of time. The funding went away for certain grants, so the program itself went away. And we feel that we're at the point in time where it would be beneficial to the district to have an SRO return or an SPO return to the Haldane campus. And it would be for the entire campus. The peace officer is a less expensive option, but it's not an active duty police officer. It's a retired police officer that is deputized and would be here. And The program is designed for an SRO, for the instructional piece, for the relationship piece. All of that would be the preferable level to hire into from the Sheriff's Department. We are only putting in $35,000, which is a little bit above what the peace officer would cost. And we are in conversation right now with Putnam County and Barbara Scuchamara about getting additional funds so we can upgrade the SPO to an SRO, and so we'll see where that goes. But at this point, there is a marker and there is a placeholder for the SPO, and we'll look at other funding sources if the Putnam County funds do not come forward.
Okay, and the last item in the enhancement and addition area of proposal number 1 is a career and tech ed program from BOCES for $20,000.
And this program is a unique program that's just starting to enter the districts in the Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES area. And basically, it is a program, a career tech education program, a hands-on kinesthetic learner kind of program that is being offered by BOCES as almost an alternative program for middle school kids. So when you have students that begin to have less enthusiasm coming to school every day and need slightly different type of educational process, they are offering different types of CTE programs that can actually be held on campus. And it would be a BOCES program. They would charge a district $20,000 for a half-time teacher. It's very inexpensive, obviously subsidized by BOCES. And it would allow some of our kids that may be less enthusiastic here during the school day to be involved in a program that's very hands-on and very interesting to them. One of the things, and we'll talk about this a little later, but one of the programs that we're looking at is a technology-related program where they actually help troubleshoot technology issues or to build technology platforms within a school district under the auspices of another piece you'll hear about soon, which is our technology director. And there would be a teacher that would be working coincide with the technology director, and our kids would actually learn how to support and develop technology programs and support the technology infrastructure within the school as part of their learning process.
So in addition to just enhancements that require addition to the budget, we have some enhancements that rely on reallocation of funds. We're taking some things that we're paying for, some items, and reallocating them to just help with efficiency. Funding for the K-8 Discover, Innovate, and Create classes will be provided in part by bringing the newsletters and website production in-house, and from a technology position, redistributing that position. So that you'll see at a later slide that having this, the makerspace, having these classes is really not a whole lot to be added to the budget because we're using the funds from other sources. Funding for the Director of Technology position will be provided in part by the reduction in contractual services, edutech, and stipend positions that are currently scattered to a few different individuals can be streamlined.
So the K-8 Discover, Innovate, and Create class will primarily occur in the makerspace. There is discussion about having an elective at the high school level that would be part of this process as well. And they're thinking along the lines of an innovation kind of Shark Tank type class where students work in groups, they create ideas, programs, and they present them to a panel of people who would then take an interest in what they've created, possibly help move it forward. So that would be something on the high school level in addition to the K-8 Discover, Innovate, and Create class that we're already seeing quite a bit occurring in the makerspace, and the project-based learning that we are seeing throughout the district is really it's exciting. I can tell you, each time I have a teacher walk in and talk about a PBL project that's being launched, I just am more and more impressed, because some of the things that are happening are really fun. And I'll just share one with you today, and I know it's actually on for later, but we have one of our social studies, middle school social studies projects, that they are being given responsibility from Sean Patrick Maloney, and they actually have a letter that he wrote to them and signed for them, and he's giving a charge, and this is launching the PBL project for the 7th grade to learn about Congress. And so it's an entirely different type of format, it's an entirely different type of program, but they're going to be doing things that are much more intensive and learning in a very different way, which was really exciting to see. The Director of Technology position, this is one that we've had spread out in so many different ways that we may not be doing it as well as we could be doing it if we had one person who's had primary responsibility. And so again, we're reallocating funds and pulling them together. So we have somebody whose main position is the Director of Technology for the district.
But it's not necessarily an administrative position.
No, and I think that we're looking at bringing it more than likely into the teaching realm, because there would be some teaching pieces, and one of the examples was what I just spoke of with the middle level group that we may potentially be bringing into kind of an alternative setting. They would be working with him or her in a teaching role as well as the teacher, and then there are other places that there would be integration.
Finally, some of the additions, the funds for that are coming from the breakage of 2 teacher retirements, because the incoming teachers will be at a lower salary than the teachers that are retiring, so there's some savings there. And special education service changes are bringing back $175,000 into the budget, which is allowing some nice additions and things to
Possibly
bring back.
more. We have some students that are aging out of the programs that they presently are in. We are also simultaneously in conversation with the Garrison and the Putnam Valley School districts, and the 3 smaller districts are in the process of developing a consortium of programs that we will be offering at all 3 schools. Each district will take on programs that fit for their students within their district, and we will be tuitioning students in. And at this point, we have a tentative understanding that we will be tuitioning 2 students into the programs that exist at Haldane for next year. And with the consortium numbers that we've actually come up with, there are 2 students that are presently tuitioned out of Haldane at Putnam Valley, and we anticipate that the tuition for both students would go down between $20,000 to $30,000. So there would be a potential of either anywhere between $40,000 and $60,000 more savings just being in the consortium, and then 2 additional tuitions coming, and that's not included in this at this point. That may be additional funds coming into the district.
And by service changes, where you're getting that big savings, you're not necessarily talking about a decrease in quality of services.
It's the same program.
Okay, I just want to make sure that people, when they read that reduction, sometimes someone would think that you're cutting services, but we're not. We're just reallocating and doing it differently. We're not actually cutting.
Correct. It's
Okay.
the exact same service that they presently get. Part of what we're looking to do is to decrease the amount of money it costs to send a student to an alternative program, and to make it easier for all of us to provide the best instruction for our students that's out there. So it will be considered one group, and the placement will be into the Putnam. We're talking about the Hudson Valley Consortium as the name, or something along those lines. And so if that would be the student's placement, would be the Hudson Valley Consortium.
And most of that $175,000 that's there on the slide is students aging out. and we're just not having to pay for the services at all. Full-time equivalent changes in Proposal 1 with the Design, Innovate, Create classes, plus the bubble class consideration, whatever that will pan out to be. The Director of Technology, the Physics Restoration, the Home and Careers Restoration, and a realignment of the technology position. That's a net proposed change in full-time equivalent of +3. This is the slide that I referred to earlier where it shows you the net cost of each of the enhancements. I netted it out because, as I said earlier, for one position to happen, other things in the budget will be reallocated. There are benefits that are associated with the addition or the deletion of a salaried position, and this is what each item, the net cost of each item is, with related benefits. For Proposal 2, what I did was I took everything that all the enhancements that went into Proposal 1 and then backed a few things out based on what we think our revenues will be, or what we hope that they'll be when we get that proposal. Modifications from Proposal 1 to Proposal 2 to reduce that budget is postponing that career tech ed program that Dr. Bowers described, reduce the Director of Technology to a half-time position, increase the physics position to 0.8 instead of full-time 1.0 position, and to fund the building condition survey from a reserve fund. Now, that's not a decrease in expenditure. We still have to keep that expenditure in the general fund, but since the money's coming back to us the following year, if we can pay for it out of the reserve, maybe put the money back in the reserve, we can do it that way if we needed to. I just have to know that in 16-17, we're going to reduce our building aid by that 35. We can't depend on it because you're going to want to probably pay that back to the reserve. And with those changes, the change in full-time equivalent is a positive 2.3. Oops. Now, the variables between Proposal 1 and Proposal 2 is we don't know what our revenue is going to be. The New York State budget is due April 1st. I don't know if it'll be on time. I've heard promises that it would be, but you never know.
At this point, it's important to note that the proposals that we're sharing with you, the amount that we're looking at this point is we're putting in 0 increase in state aid. Nothing, no change in the GEA, no change in the state aid. And then hopefully when we do have something coming to us by April 1st, we'll know how much state aid we're actually going to have as an increase.
So for everything to happen in Proposal 1, as we described, we would need an additional revenue source of $175,000. That has changed because we did, even as soon as today, we did hear that we're going to get a bit more in tuition, and the changes that Dr. Bowers described as far as the consortium, those are all includable in revenues. It's not just state aid. So if we do get increases in revenues from other sources, then that's included in that 175. Proposal 2 anticipates additional revenue of $65,000 over our current estimate, what we're using for this year, and the use of reserves for the building condition survey of $35,000, and a spending reduction from this previous slide, those few items that I detailed, they come to about $75,000 for a reduction. So those are the differences between Proposal 1 and Proposal 2.
One of the things that Ann was sharing is we did get verification of the number of students that will be coming to us from Garrison this year. And so that, the dollar values of 65 and 175 will be just down by about 27,000. So we're probably looking at 40, around 40, or a little bit less, and 148 or so, instead of 175 and 65. So we're getting closer.
So those two, just to clarify while we're on that slide, they don't include the tuitions that we just found out about that we got added to from
Correct.
Garrison.
Yep.
And they don't include anything that we will get from the consortium.
Correct.
And that meeting happens next week, I think.
On the 13th, yes.
Okay.
So really, Proposal 2 is a pretty solid proposal because we're confident that those other tuitions and changes would give us the $65,000, and if the board decided to fund the building condition survey with the reserves, Proposal 2 looks very solid, and ever optimistic for Proposal number 1.
Our
Great.
fingers are crossed that one is going to be an easy change, and hopefully we'll have a little extra money coming in from state aid, so we could come back for a discussion on where those funds will go.
So just in summary, we have our final budget of the 14-15 school year that we're operating on now. Those are the bottom lines for Proposal 1 and Proposal 2. The budget-to-budget increases are modest, and the tax levy increase and the tax rate percentage increase, I just want to share that, as I always do, I put that out there with caution because it is such an estimate. It's an estimate based on fund balance projections, which are on target from the analysis that I've recently done. And but we don't have assessment values until the summer. But our tax levy increase, that's the maximum allowable tax levy increase, is the 2.72. That is the cap that everyone talks about, that we have to be in compliance with, that our tax levy increase comes out to 2.72% increase under that tax cap law.
If I could talk a little bit about that. The way that the tax levy increase, the allowable tax levy increase is, the way it's been named is the 2% tax cap. And I can tell you that there probably would be no districts, or if there are, very, very few districts that actually will have a 2% increase. The 2% increase is a misnomer, and basically what they're saying is the state allows us to look at 2% or the CPI, whatever is lower. So you may not even be coming in with a 2% increase. The CPI this year
Is 1.62.
So 1.62, so we're not actually calculating 2%, we're starting with a 1.62.
Right. The 2% comes from that over right there where the green mark is, that it's the lesser of the CPI or 2%, and that's how it got its name.
It's 0.162 is calculated into it. In addition to that, there are a number of other things that districts can either add or subtract from that to get the allowable tax levy limit instead of the 2% tax cap. And what districts calculate and what they have to submit to the state is based on all the allowable things, what you can actually raise your tax levy and still be under the tax cap. So it's probably a better thing to call it a tax cap than a 2% tax cap, because nobody comes in at 2%. And so all districts started out with 1.62 as the allowable level, which is the CPI this year. And then all the other things that are on here are the calculations that we can add or delete from, depending on what it is, in order to get our tax levy limit. So our tax levy limit this year is 2.72. It is not 2. And if we are 2.72 or below, we are under the tax cap. And so just because it is over 2% does not mean that we've exceeded the tax cap. We are still planning on going under the tax cap. And the way that it's set up at this point, the taxpayer will get the rebate of the 2.72% increase. It will be divided up based on where they live and all the other variables within the taxing jurisdiction. But it doesn't necessarily make sense not to go to the allowable tax levy increase, because the taxpayer is not going to pay that additional 2.72%. They will initially pay it, and then it gets refunded by the state, just as it did this year. So it makes sense for districts to try to go to their tax levy limit. And again, the taxpayer, the way that it's set up this year, the taxpayer received a rebate. Next year, the taxpayer will receive a rebate. So districts are basically going to the tax levy limit, because if they don't use it, the additional potential funds will go into the general funds, and it will be distributed among other districts or wherever else the state chooses to use it. So the common discussion at this point is that it doesn't make a lot of sense not to go to the tax levy at this point. And our tax levy limit is 2.7%, and that is under the tax cap. So is there anything that I missed from that?
That's good, thank you.
Talk about, and municipal governments in general as well, talk about exceeding the cap. And specifically for schools, you would have to go over the 2.72. And with schools, it would require 60% of the public support versus staying under the cap, which is just a majority.
Correct.
Right? That's where schools are a little different from municipalities. Okay. Rebate comes back, so you could kind of conceptually talk about a net number? Is there a way of figuring that out, or we're not even there yet? That's
So-
something down the line?
2.72, that's the 490,000?
Yes.
It's $490,000 that would come back to the taxpayers in our district. And last year, the rebates were relatively small, because our tax levy limit last year was very low. We weren't anywhere close to 2%. So what was the tax levy limit last year?
The levy limit was 1.09,
Yep.
and our tax levy turned out to be even much lower than that.
So the tax levy limit was not 2.72 last year, it was 1.09, and so the taxpayers received the 1.09% increase as the refund last year. This will be higher this year. And it all depended on the calculations. Some years it goes higher than 2%, and some years it goes below. And there are some districts that have actually gone into the negative values because of the calculations, where they can't raise the amount of taxes that they raised one year. They actually have to decline. And so it all depends on the calculations, and this is the way our calculation occurred this year.
So at some point, as we get closer, is there a way of estimating what that net number might actually come out to? I mean, I always subscribe to the theory that people care about what comes out of their pockets.
Should be zero.
It would be zero,
Theoretically, it would be zero.
yes.
Okay, so the net would be zero, theoretically, if you follow the governor's methodology.
Right, for the taxpayers.
Okay,
I think it's a big theoretically in most people's minds, though, until the check actually arrives in the mailbox. I think everybody is likely to be skeptical of that.
Right.
And that's why I think we do have to be very cautious. 'Cause I certainly understand the rationale for going to 2.72%. The understanding is that everybody will get every penny of that back, so we should go to the max. But there's nobody here tonight listening to our message, and there will be people watching it on TV, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, we have to somehow sell that to the public. Because most people will show up at vote time and they'll see 2.72%, and they'll say, oh, why is it more than 2%?
And maybe we need to have some type of handout that
Right.
explains that process, so if that question is asked at that moment, we can provide that for them.
Because they do have a track record. They've done it now for a year. So this would now be the second year.
Right.
And it's the governor's proposal, which everyone, I think, for the most part, seems to agree, because it's money coming back.
It's money coming back.
But yeah, we probably should try to figure out a way to explain it in English,
Right.
not something like this, which is physics.
Well, we can figure out some kind of way, whether it's a video that loops or it's
Okay.
a printout or handout that would explain it. And Ann, am I correct in saying that when they get their rebate this year, they'll get the money from this school year and next school year? It's combined for the rebate?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not positive. We have to, I have to investigate that further. There's different opinions on the way that that it's presented. I don't have it with me, but we can put it on the website after I let the board look at it. There is a handout that is put out by the state taxation department. It's on their website. It's a 2-page explanation of how you're going to get your rebate in year 1, in year 2, in year 3. School districts are not part of year 3. Villages are, but there's certain guidelines. You have to, if you're eligible for STAR, you're eligible for this rebate. So in general, that's the rule of thumb. If you get your STAR exemption, then you can expect this.
But at a minimum, it will be the 2.72 if
Yes.
that's where we go. Okay.
Now, I thought this was the first year that there was a requirement that we demonstrate that we've reduced our tax levy by 1% by sharing services.
It's a culmination of multiple years, and yes, this year, this school year, next school year will also be included. And what we have to do is show that we have done we have taken the equivalent of 1% and shared services. And one of the reasons why this consortium of special ed students is so important to us right now, obviously, other than it's a savings for the district and the right things to do for kids, is that this is a shared service that doesn't presently exist, that we can now move into. So those dollar values, as well as transportation and any of the other things that we're going to be sharing within the next year to two will be calculated, and that will be part of that. And when do we actually submit those calculations?
June 1st. So that document has to be submitted June 1st. It's not a reduction in our tax levy. That's the amount that we need to target to show for shared services and to show efficiencies. So we have to show that we saved and we had some shared services, but we also have some efficiencies on our own that fall within the guidelines for that 1%.
And we're still trying to find out whether additional services in situations like BOCES usage. And everybody, that's the whole purpose behind BOCES, is to share services and to decrease funds by having a large consortium. But we're not sure. Did we ever get definitive answer on whether we can use the BOCES services?
No, not for some of them. It's
Yeah.
still up in the air, so, they haven't changed our due date to file this information, but yet they haven't clarified what's going to be.
So there are a few things that need to be finalized before we can comfortably go to that tax cap, knowing for sure that everybody's going to get their rebate.
But I don't know if they will have those things available for us to finalize until we have to adopt the budget. Honestly, I doubt it, because we've been waiting for quite some time to get some real definitive information from the state, at least on the efficiency situation. But I don't know if, I agree totally that we should be able to do that, but I don't know if we're going to be able to do that.
I mean, I think for all intensive purposes, given the climate in Albany, we're going to be kind of bobbing and weaving a little bit over the course of the next 4 weeks as the state clarifies itself and has some of these rules and things. And we probably just have to come up with some assumptions as we keep moving forward. You know, by all accounts, they seem to think they will have a budget by April 1st, and where that budget will be will provide clarity. You know, I think it's encouraging that the Assembly has a budget that's up here, the governor's here. My guess is the Senate's going to be somewhere around here, and given the way politics works, they're going to meet someplace. You know, we still have a democracy in this country, last I heard, and I don't think the governor got that memo.
We should adopt our budget until like April 15th or whatever it is, the 14th.
14th.
Whatever
Yeah.
the date is that we've
14th 's
decided,
our
right?
date.
14th.
Okay. Okay. Can you put that little video that was on the tax levy on the website? There's a little short video that's, I don't even, it's like a minute that somebody did. I don't even know who did it.
I think it's on there, but it's kind of embedded into the
It's really
budget
good because it
information.
explains how the
Yeah.
tax levy and the tax cap really works in
Yes.
English, and it's done very simplistically.
If you go under the budget area, there are two links, I believe, there.
Okay.
I also thought the way that you just, that Dr. Bowers just explained it was really in English as well. You know, it was really helpful. So I don't know how many more opportunities you have to talk to the public about the budget, or how many people watch the board meetings or come to the board meetings. But I felt like the way you just described what is the levy and why are we going to this limit and, you know, et cetera, was really helpful.
Well, I know I have a PTA meeting or coffee coming up in the morning, sometime in April. So that will be an opportunity, and yeah.
The way
Yeah.
you said it, I thought was really good.
And maybe if you could take some of the makerspace kids from middle school and grab an iPad and do your own little project-based learning video,
Actually, that would be a fun thing to do.
that's not crazy.
I think I'll visit
And it's
Mr. Dudar's
educational.
class.
And circulate it. I think that
Very
would be
good.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know where to go.
Questions from you guys on Proposal 1, 2, and any of the other things that we've talked about so far? I have a couple, but
Just a couple of questions. One is, well, regarding the CTE middle school program, I mean, I think I'd want to see a lot more about that program, because that seems like a significant amount of money for, like, you know, for a middle school program that, I mean, it sounds like it's more like a club than it is like a course.
No, it's actually 2 full periods a day of teaching time.
Okay.
And so what it would be, and you can choose, they have 5 or 6 areas you can choose from as far as a CTE course, and it's very similar to what students would have or would be in a BOCES program if they were to go up to BOCES in 10th grade, 11th or 12th grade. To
Right.
see a CTE program, it's very similar to that, but it's a little bit scaled back for middle school, and it's actually taught in the home school district. So it's not an after-school program. It's actually during school time, and they integrate certain disciplines into it. And some of the middle school requirements, the 1-year requirements over the 4-year period, for things like technology and other, the home and careers, all of that is integrated into it. But it's a home base for, it would be probably, I would say, for somewhere between 12 to 15 students that would be in there for an extended period of time, would be looking at specific types of training. And that would then launch them into the BOCES programs in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And what we're actually, maybe I shouldn't say it's middle school, because what we're looking at right now is an 8th grade and a 9th grade combination to be in those 2 periods during the day. And that would keep them engaged for 8th and 9th grade until they could get into the BOCES program and spend half day at BOCES.
And would that be a program that kids would say, I want to be in? They would
Yes.
be something that students would be kind of maybe encouraged to be, or a combination of the two, or?
Well, the way that we were discussing it, they would have to apply for it, and they would have to give a rationale as to why they were the right candidate for the program. So it would be seen as a gift for these kids. And so they would have to explain why a more non-traditional type of instructional program would benefit them, as opposed to staying in the program that exists right now. But there were a number of students that both the principals and the assistant principal really thought would benefit from this, and probably keep them much more engaged than they would if we don't go this direction.
Okay. And then
Just
my
on
other-
that same subject, though,
Yeah.
do we have space for this?
Yes, we'll find it. If it's something that we can do financially, it'll be something that we'll do. We'll find it, yes. And, you know, some of the technology classrooms right now, some of the technology will be moving towards the home and careers, and so that will leave that
Yeah.
area available.
And my other thing is with the bubble teacher. And I went through a lot of years dealing every year with the bubble class, yes, no. So, and again, it's not that we're going to make a decision based on perception, but I just feel as though that your idea of maybe a push-in with special ed and reading, that's like one of those things where both sides won't be happy. The side that says, why do we need another teacher? And the side that says, why are we having 23, 24 students in a class?
Right.
Because neither one of them, because it's the extra teacher, so those people are not going to be happy, and then the parents that want a class of 18, 19 kids in the class are not going to be happy. So I just feel as though that's like one of those decisions that, just to be careful with it, that where you're going to have both sides not happy, and even more of a debate on it than we have. Because over the years, I just find with the bubble class that, you know, we talk about it, and then at the next meeting, we got this group, and then we talk about it again, and then we have another group. So I just feel as though a lot of explaining and selling is going to have to go into that
Right.
type of rationale, as opposed to just bringing on a fourth teacher.
Right, and what it would be, it'd be a team of 4 teachers as opposed to 1 teacher per class. And so it would be a very fluid kind of structure that would allow for whatever it is at a certain time of the year for students to be in the right place at the right time. But you're right, you're absolutely right. We'll have to do a lot of explaining so people understand not only the rationale behind it, but how it actually would occur.
Okay. Jen?
I really like the idea of the additional teacher as a flexible, kind of go to where they need to go, actually. I think it's actually a brilliant way to fix that problem of the bubble class.
Right.
Yeah. So my questions, and maybe these questions have been asked over the past few meetings, so I apologize in advance.
Where have you been?
Not sleeping.
You had to have a baby. You could have been in the budget talk.
Babe. The funding of the BCS, the $35,000, are we sure that that's coming back? Like, are we 100% sure that that's coming back the next year? Is there any, like, oh, maybe the state changes their mind, or oh, they give us partial funding back, or is there any of that possible, or are we like 100%?
Yes or no?
That's a trick question.
Is that
5 years ago, it all came back to us when we did this 5 years ago. The current law is written so that it is coming back to us. What could happen tomorrow? I can't say 100% anything really when the state's in that sentence.
But you're pretty
But-
confident. You're confident that it is
I'm
coming
very
back as they have
confident.
said.
Yes,
Okay.
because that is a whole different section of state aid. That would be the facilities area, and what I have heard was that the governor hasn't looked over there yet. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Fantastic. So, and my other question is that in the proposal number 2, we have the director of technology going to part-time to 0.5. And in proposal number 1, it was a full-time position, and that was taking other stipends and taking other pieces from somebody else and consolidating. So are those pieces still being taken in?
To a lesser amount, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And so it's to a lesser amount, so we would still be using Edutech more
Okay.
and meeting the needs, but this would just be moving it towards that. And I really hope very much that if we go this direction, we can hire a really good full-time person. I think that's the best case scenario anyway. And, again, my sense is that we're not going to, if we're somewhere between 1 and 2, that would be what would go back in.
Okay, so that's a priority for
Yeah.
you as your.
Because I think we're going to get a better candidate. The quality of candidate
Right.
would be different.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Great, okay.
Let's change the tape on that note. Coming back to you. Anything?
That's it for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pete?
Yeah, so I'm coming at this with last year's budget process burned into my mind because there was no question that was the worst budget in recent memory. So I'm inclined to be really cautious about our approach to this year's budget.
Really?
Given given that there are still so many unknowns on the revenue side in particular. So looking at the parameters that we set up in advance, are we within the tax cap? Well, we discussed that already. We are within the tax cap. Opting out of the pension smoothing, we're going to have that discussion at a later time. But our plan is to be out within the next 1 to 2 years, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever is the most beneficial for us. I don't yet see any reduction in appropriated fund balance. It looks as though we're still relying upon the same level of fund balance as we did this year and we have in the past. So I don't see
this point.
us starting to chip away at that.
Well, but I think that if we do see a change in state aid.
Yes.
An increase in state aid and/or a reduction in GEA, then
Of
that
course.
would come into question.
Yeah. So actually, what I'm thinking, my sort of general approach is that, I think pretty much without exception, I think all of the items presented to us tonight are great ideas, and I hope that we can do them all. And I actually feel pretty confident that we will be able to do them all, because at this point, I really fully expect that we will be getting additional money from the state. But I'm inclined to say, let's push some of these things out of proposal 1 or 2 and onto our wish list, and then reinstate them when we actually know for sure what we're getting from the state. Because we're not yet starting to fund any of those reserves that we've now depleted. We're certainly doing a lot of staff development. Sounds as though we're keeping pace with technology. I don't know what we're doing to expand and improve on our website. So that's certainly one question that I have about this reallocation of funds, because we're saying we're going to bring that in-house. So the question is, who's going to do it?
Well, at this point, we have a combination. It will more than likely fall under the teacher in the makerspace. And it will have a student component with it, and then it will be in combination with the director of technology. So it will be taken from the present location or the present responsibilities into a different level of responsibility. And we won't know if we're going to be looking at a template that we will be redeveloping or starting from scratch and making it a learning experience. But that's all part and parcel.
All right, so
of
we've
the
all
shift.
looked at the website many times in the last few years and said how much we want to improve it.
Yep.
Uh,
And that's an expectation.
Okay. On the building condition survey, I really believe that we should just fund that from the capital reserve with the intention of putting it back when we get reimbursed, and just get it out of the budget for this year.
Is that really the number of what it costs? 35 grand for that thing?
Yes, it is.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It has to stay in the budget as an expense. It can't come out of there. I tried. I was I was doing some of my own lobbying to say, can't we just pay for this out of capital? It has to come out of the general fund in order to be reimbursed, because that's how it's reported. If it's reported as a general fund expenditure, then it's reimbursed the next year, but it can.
But you can do a
shift.
reallocation of funds
Yes,
to make sure
for
that that
on
happens.
the revenue side.
Okay. For staff development, we had also talked about this, that 33,000. We had talked about potentially using the endowment for some or all of that.
And that would be up to the board. If that, I mean, that's the dollar values that I asked for, and with an explanation of some of the areas that we would be focused on. But yes, that certainly is.
See, I would be inclined to say that might be a good use of those funds until, but when we find out that we're getting more state aid than we anticipated, that might be a good place to say, let's target that to staff development and leave the endowment intact. Since we have a lot of flexibility in the use of those funds at some future time. The co-curricular, I had asked about this when Brian brought this up a couple of weeks back. ROAR was the club that he specifically mentioned that has great student participation. It's been student-led, student-operated for 3 years. And that to me is enormously admirable that they've done that. And perhaps I would actually like to see that be a model for other clubs. And I wonder also if the students are anxious to have a teacher lead their club when they've had the autonomy to run it the way they want it for the last 3 years, and it sounds as though they've been very successful. So I would just have a question about that. And if we're adding 3 clubs, I think I'd suggested before that maybe we need to look at other clubs that we have that aren't so well subscribed, and instead of just increasing the number of clubs all the time, try and stabilize at a certain number of clubs, but add and subtract. On the reallocation of funds, I asked about the website, and also I need to ask, who's going to do our on-site technical support? And that's not just running around fixing printers and resetting passwords. It's reconfiguring the firewall, setting up, reconfiguring servers, all that kind of stuff. EduTech brings a lot of expertise in that regard.
But we do have EduTech still in here for a certain number of days.
Well, we only have them two days a week
So right
currently.
now, so that would be, we have them for 100 days a year, and a lot of those 100 days are used to do exactly what you were talking about, just the changing passwords. But I think, what is it, that we kept 20 to 25 days in EduTech, so those are the days that we would have that specialized support.
Yeah, because EduTech, I feel EduTech has been a great partner to us, not just in the on-site technical support, but through the audit committee. We did the IT audit last year, and with the help of EduTech, they did phenomenal work for us. They really worked as our partner. They did a lot of work at very low cost to us. So I'm a little reluctant to sort of usher them out. And if you could put them down to like 1 day a week, at that level they may well lose interest, go elsewhere, decide they're not willing to help us out the way they have in the past. So that's a concern that I have about doing that. If we can't fully replace the support and expertise that they've provided to us over the last few years. I'm not entirely clear what this Director of Technology position is all about yet. It sounds like it's a bit of website, a bit of tech support, a bit of instructional support.
I can tell you that there's been a lot of discussion about the moving to a Google platform, helping to integrate the components within Google Education into our school, looking at working the creation or purchasing of Chromebooks as opposed to iPads, in not all cases, but in some cases, to allow us to spread our dollar values further and to integrate the technology into all instructional areas. So it's more of an instructional technology type of position with tech support included in it. But there are things that we are not doing as a district right now that we should be looking at doing, and we just don't have the personnel to allow that to happen. And so all of that would be included, as well as any work with PBL, combinations of work with the new person in the makerspace, and bringing us to a different level technologically and integration specialist-wise.
Yeah, because the title, Director of Technology, it doesn't sort of align with, at least what I think of as a Director of Technology isn't quite aligning with the description of the role here. It's not a director level position, and it's not a director level salary. So that's, I think, maybe I'm just finding a little bit of confusion there.
It's probably more along the lines of a technology integration specialist.
Yeah.
And right now, for the budget, we chose to use that terminology because I think people can understand that better than a technology integration specialist.
Oh.
I'm going to actually agree with Peter on that one. I think
Okay.
director makes it seem like more of an administrative position, whereas that's more of like it's like he's the director of himself, basically. You know, we want him to be working with the system. So I'm going to agree with Peter. I think the director sounds like more of an administrative position, as opposed to an integrated specialist. So I think we should maybe
call it a
consider that.
technology integration specialist if that.
Yeah,
if
I
that
think
makes
so,
it
and I
more
do.
understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tweak. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
like there just needs to be just a little more clarity as to what that position is
Because when you hear
envisioned.
director, it's like, well, is that going to change Jen Wilson's role?
Yes, to a certain degree, yes, it will.
It-
And it will free her up in order for her to spend more time in some of the other areas that are her responsibility.
Well, if we did decide that half-time that we were constrained to half-time on that position, I wonder if that might be an opportunity to do some sharing with a neighboring district, because it sounds like exactly the kind of role that every school should have filled.
And if that's the direction we have to end up going financially, then that's a great idea. We can have the conversation. And there may actually be somebody that's already employed in others that they'd be willing to share.
Yeah, so yeah, just on that, just my level of anxiety there about us overextending ourselves before we know for sure what we have on the revenue side. I mean, it's great that we're seeing this reduction in special education service charges, but that's something that kind of goes up and down every year. It's not, in other words, it's not recurring revenue necessarily. Whereas when we bring somebody on as a new hire, then that's a recurring expense. So I just get a little nervous about that kind of a reallocation. So
Anything else?
that's, you'll be pleased to know that is it for me.
I'm hungry. I'll go get something to eat and come back. Just kidding. Okay. All right, so just kind of recap a little bit here. I mean, I think you guys obviously came up with Proposition 1 and 2 in conjunction with Ann and through the Administrative Council and all your conversations. So there's been some scrutiny to this stuff prior to we even seeing this, so which is a good thing. You guys are working well together as a team, and that's ultimately what it should be about. It sounds like, for all intensive purposes, we're pretty much at Proposition 2 when you give or take, is what it sounds like. Proposition 1 sounds like we're at the mercy of some exterior factor, which might be the state of New York, and we need $175,000 to get to Proposition 1. What I would suggest is we kind of tweak some of the clarity that some people want with both 1 and 2. For instance, Evan mentioned just more explanation of how the bubble class / specialist reading / special ed role would work. Maybe if we can get a little more clarity on that. A little more clarity, a couple of people spoke about the technology director position or the integrated specialist or whatever you want to call it, but kind of like how that role would play. The issue of using endowment for professional development, I don't have a problem. If we're going to budget, and I think we spoke at the last meeting, the 24th of February, of trying to budget approximately $24,000 a year in professional development and keep that going. This first year, I think we were at 32. So I would suggest take that difference from the endowment, but keep the other one in the budget so that we know that we're constantly there with it. What I'd hate to see happen is we're gung-ho, the teachers are all fired up, which they already are. We have this great initiative, and boom, the rug gets pulled out in year 2 because of a budget scenario. I would suggest that. It sounds like pension smoothing is going to happen because it's in our best interest. If it isn't, it may happen next year. So it seems like that's getting addressed, which is a good thing. Maybe just a little bit of clarification on some of the special ed stuff, which I think, of Jen maybe being a chance to free up some of the 85 responsibilities she has. I think that's just a huge plus for the district. I would like to, kind of along Peter's line, see us take a look at some of the existing clubs, and can we re-energize, or maybe a club needs a vacation for a year and maybe a new club needs to be kicked in, that kind of approach?
Well, we are having, and actually it was on the snow day last week, we were going to be meeting for the Schedule B committee, and we have a committee with the HFA, and the administrators are going to come together and look at presently what we have and what we're doing with clubs and extracurriculars and making modifications to Schedule B. So some of what you're asking for, the ones that may not be these vibrant clubs, will be considered during that time.
Great. Perfect. The coaches contingency fund, I think, is a great idea. Track is a perfect example. The participation number in track is astronomical this year. I mean, you're looking at like 50, 60 kids participating in a healthy sport like that. That's fabulous. I think, we have to take a look at that. So I like that idea. As long as we do take a look at the handbook over the summer, the athletic handbook, and that kind of gets a revision, because I think that needs a look and just needs a little bit more clarity and modernization as to how these things happen and what is our philosophy in athletics, and
It's already in discussion.
that would be great.
And I'm actually meeting with the athletic director tomorrow on the same
Good.
thing.
And then the SRO, SPO conversation, school resource, school peace officer. I sat in on the meeting with Brian and Dr. Bowers with 4 people from Putnam County Sheriff's Office. One was head of the SRO, one of them was an SRO, and the other 2 were in the department. And I was actually very impressed with the conversation. And I was on the board when we had the old SRO. I was on the board when we cut the old SRO for many reasons, which I won't get into. But I was very impressed with the level of education and counseling that you can get from an SRO. And I think it would just be an enormous asset to the school, and I think it would also help Brian take a little bit more of his time and focus on some education and not have to worry about some of the things that he does worry about, because he has another body in that role. So I was very impressed with that, and I would encourage anybody to just Google School Resource Officer in Putnam County, and you'll see what is on their website. It's impressive. So if Barbara Scuchamora can come up with something, I think it would be great, and it would be a good thing for the district.
I think along those lines, there does need to be some education to the public about what an SRO or an SPO does, because I think there's this perception that it's just about, having an armed guard at the front door, and that's a real negative for most of our community. So I think there does need to be some education before we implement, if we decide to implement that position.
Yeah, and it's a solid position that works, and everybody has one in Putnam except us. So I think it's worth following through a little bit more in detail. So I think you guys did a great job. Proposition 1, if it can happen, is probably one of the better budgets I've seen in many years here. And it's also smart, and it's not just spending. So that's what every public official wants to see, and they all talk about it in their campaign ads. We want to spend smarter because we want to run like a business, that whole rap. You're actually doing it, and I think if we can make it happen, that's good. So what I would suggest is, let's get a little more clarity on some of the details. Let's keep 1 and 2 in our mix, and let's just kind of see how the world unfolds over the course of the next couple weeks. And these things possibly can change for the better, and take it from there. We have till April 14th to adopt. That was our plan. So that's what I would suggest. And for the public, what I would suggest is go back to board docs and watch the videos from February 3rd, February 24th, and tonight, March 10th, and then you've got your entire class on school budgets. And you will learn all about school budgets in those 3 videos. And if you watch probably the first 35 minutes of each of those meetings, you'll know as much as we do, and more in some instances. So that's what I would suggest as well. Okay. Any other budget thoughts?
No, but I have a basketball thought. Our boys are tied at 14 at the half. So
Defensive struggle. Okay, great. Why don't we take questions from the public on the 2 or anything that we spoke about already? Anyone?
All right, I have a couple of curiosities.
Sure.
I'm going to go all the way to the mic today, Evan.
State your name, Lourdes.
Lourdes Slafer. They're curiosities, really. The high school clubs, what are the other clubs aside from Roar that we're looking to?
I would have to pull Brian's
Oh, all right.
information out. Would you remember what the... Oh, there you
Oh,
go. She has
excellent.
it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
And how much additional are we looking for an SRO? What's the increase in cost from an SPO?
Well, right now we have 35,000 budgeted into the budget. The SRO is actually 28,000, but the first year you have it, they buy the uniforms and the equipment, and so it's 35,000. The SRO is 55,000. So it's about 20,000 differential.
Great. Well, hopefully Barbara Scuchamaro will be able to get us those funds. That would be great.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on any of this? Okay, let's move to superintendent's report. Dr. Bowers?
I'm not there yet, so, sorry. Well, the peace officer is one, so I think that I've already explained a little bit about that. Then the other is that we have on the superintendent's report, the next meeting of the Board of Education is the workshop on the 17th of this month. So we invite you to come to see that.
And that's next week.
And we'll all be wearing green. That's next Tuesday.
Yeah, just
Yes.
Yeah, 5:30?
5:30, yes, and we will be looking at the 10-year recommendations and just some information about some of the newer staff and where we are at that.
So we'll have an executive session at 5:30. It qualifies under the law. And then the public meeting will start at 7. Got it. Okay. Committee minutes, Booster Club Safety Committee. Any questions? Okay. Any communication from the public? No? Okay. Correspondence, we have one letter from Nicole Padala. I'll just kind of paraphrase. It's in board docs, the actual letter. She graduated in the class of 2014. She's attending University of Vermont right now. And she just was advocating for the internship program at the high school level. She had an experience with Constitution Marsh, which was extremely favorable. That was, I believe, taken out of last year's budget. And I guess there are some conversations about trying to put that back in some different capacity. And I emailed her back just thanking her for her comments. She's a friend of my daughter, so I actually know her fairly well. But that's great to see a Haldane graduate so recent reach out to the school board with an advocacy. That's what we want.
Yeah, I would just say that I wasn't specifically aware that we were cutting that program last year. I know that we, when Ginny Padala retired, we converted her position to .4. I didn't know at the time that this was one of the programs that was being eliminated. I would really like to see it come back because, you know, it's particularly in the strategic plan, we've been talking about expanding the boundaries of the campus and getting our students out into the community, doing meaningful things, building relationships outside of school. And an internship program sounds like exactly the way to do that. So I hope we can find a way to get that back in the program.
Well, and I know there is some real interest in including that, and maybe even expanding on that. And the conversations have happened a number of times where we've been looking at the options available to us, especially for our seniors. So you'll hear more on that in the future.
Okay. Thank you. H1, minutes from the meeting, February 24th, 2015. We motion this again? Is this a motion? Okay. Motion?
One motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you, Julia and Cecilia, for getting the videos and the minutes in a very prompt fashion. You guys are like setting records as far as turning this stuff around, and it's most appreciated. Consent agenda financial, motion?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? Thank you to the anonymous donation for a assistant coaching stipend. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda personnel, motion?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, I'm sorry. K1, unfinished, approval of resolution. We spoke, I believe, at the last meeting and possibly the one before that, of a resolution to the governor with regards to his reform agenda. We tweaked it slightly, and I sent everybody a copy of that along with what the original one is. I think we just modified a couple of tiny little things. Did anybody want to have a in-depth conversation on that, or are we all okay? I'm fine with this one that's here. I think Peter was fine with that, and okay. You guys are good? Okay, and I know John was okay, and he emailed me over the weekend.
I'm happy with it, the way we've tweaked it. Last time I had expressed some reservations because of the politically charged nature of some of the content, but we've taken care of that by eliminating a couple of paragraphs. So now it's about capital elimination adjustment, APPR, and pre-K.
The full resolution is on the board docs. Julia, do you want to just kind of read the first paragraph to?
Sure. This is the resolution pertaining to reform Governor Cuomo's 2015 Opportunity Agenda for Education. Whereas there is agreement with Governor Cuomo that access to education from pre-kindergarten through college can pave the way to economic and social opportunities, to better jobs and more successful lives, many of the proposals in the governor's 2015 Opportunity Agenda are untenable and will have significant negative consequences. And the last part too?
Yeah, you might as well.
Yeah.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Haldane Central School District urges state legislators to review these proposals in details, gather input from research and from those in the field, and rebuff the elements of the Cuomo education reform agenda which will instill inappropriate measures of accountability and negatively impact the classroom learning environment and local control.
Okay, thank you. To adopt this, do we need a resolution? You know, a motion and all that kind of stuff? Do you want to give us some direction on wording?
Yes, the recommended action is that the Board of Education approves this resolution
Okay.
related to the,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Can we maybe put this, the approved one, on our website, maybe in the budget section or something, so people can reference it as well? I think what's happening is the lobbyists and some of our elected officials are going to take these stack of resolutions that boards are approving. And in our last meeting, we approved a resolution as well about the state aid funding. And they're basically going to walk into the office with the governor and say, I've got a stack of 300 resolutions, and now let's negotiate. And I think that's really what it's about, and that's a good thing. So hopefully something comes of it. Unfinished PBL, Dr. Bowers?
So actually, I think that we're going to postpone this discussion on PBL or this presentation on PBL until next week. We have a video that came from our chemistry class that I'd like to show. Yeah, and so I think that kind of gives us an idea of what we're seeing within the project-based learning within our schools. And I've watched the video 2 or 3 times, and I just can't stop laughing as I watch through it. So it's really very good.
We'll get that next week?
Yep, that will be at the next meeting. Communities That Care Coalition, we invite any parents that would like to hear about the data from the survey that we had last year with the Haldane students for the Communities That Care Coalition. It will be presented tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at the Butterfield Library. So anybody who would like to come, we invite you to join us.
Okay.
And Monolith Solar. We had a visit, and Ann, please, anything that you would like to add to this. We had a visit from Monolith Solar, and right now all the information from Monolith and for our solar project sits on the desk somewhere at State Ed. And one of the things that they have considered and are starting to move towards is moving from solar panels being on the property in a situation like we have in a school district where they would be on our roofs, and they are buying land and creating solar farms. And in hopes that our school district might consider a solar farm instead of having all the solar panels on the roofs of the buildings on campus, they've actually purchased, with fingers crossed, 3 acres in the Poughkeepsie area right off Route 55. And there is a much greater efficiency and a number of other benefits that occur when you have a solar farm, which would be the Haldane Solar Farm, instead of having them on the roof. And one of the things that really struck me was the ability of the solar farm to move, the panels, the photovoltaics, to actually move to capture the maximum sunlight, which couldn't happen on the roof. And they are very interested. There's one school district that has already opted not to have the solar panels on campus, but have them in a farm in Scotia. We would be the second in New York State if this is a direction we chose to go. The other benefit of this is that it would take it away from SED and take the approval process from SED, because it would not be on our property, it would be on a solar farm. And it would allow us to get our whole farm in place and ready to go by early September, they were saying? Yes. Early in the fall. So they are willing to come either to Skype, or if they would come down again if we would like them to. If there are questions, if you'd like to ask and learn a little bit more about it. I did send you some information that they shared when they came. I can tell you they were very excited about the prospect, and I think this is the direction things are going to be moving. It could happen a lot sooner, and probably with a lot less red tape if we went this direction. So.
And it'd be more efficient.
We would also,
It would be
there's
more
also a
efficient,
dollar
and there's
value.
an increased dollar amount, which I found very attractive too. And I just like the fact that I know that when we talked about it, we said our roofs were safe with these things, the panels on there. But I'm very protective of our roof because it's new, I don't want anything puncturing it. And although we've been assured that the roof is safe and that the warranty would be maintained, still you're putting stuff up on the roof. And we talked to them about the educational opportunity for the students to see. But even if it was here, they're not going up on the roof anyway. You know, there could be a field trip to the farm. There could be maybe a sample panel here, or maybe some type of integration. I know that one time when they came and they did a presentation, they had their iPads, and you can see the meter running and the saving that's going on, you know, right there. So there's some benefits to that.
And we would get 10 cents per kilowatt hour generated by the solar panels. If they were on our roofs, they would increase that to 16 cents per kilowatt hour if we had the solar farm, and the 6 cents would be a rebate that would come to the district through the electric company.
So financially, it's a better deal because, one, it doesn't need SED approval, and their cost structure obviously is a lot lower. And they're also putting them on flat farm property versus a building with school kids. So that's how they're making the deal work financially.
Right.
Okay.
Why aren't other school districts doing this yet? Are we just like next in line, so we're number 2, or?
I think we're in the right place at the right time. And I think we will see more of this, and it will probably allow for more school districts to use renewable energy sources by doing it this way, if they may not have the structures that allow it on campus.
So the other school districts that are involved with this company, either they probably already have their solar panels on the roof, so they're not going to change it. We just happen to be kind of haven't gotten approval yet, so we're actually a little bit in limbo.
Right.
So we're a good candidate.
And the size of our project
I see.
fits perfectly in this piece of land that they purchased. Where we are on the list for credits, the credits that that are reserved for us are not as high as what's being given out now. So it's really a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Well, it's a win-win, minus the educational opportunity, which I think was a huge component of why we wanted this to happen. It fits in with this whole idea of green campus that we've been talking about, again, at strategic plan. I'd like to see us do both. We should explore the possibility of doing both.
And that is something that we talked about. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the size that we would have if it was on campus, but couldn't we do an array of cells here and do a farm? And that was something that they weren't sure exactly how that was going to work. But that was something we had a discussion on, both on the phone and when they came, because there's an obvious educational piece. And I do believe that there would be times that we could take the kids, put them on a bus and take them up to the farm so they could, that would be monitored and there would be some educational experience there, but it's different than looking up and seeing it from a roof.
Well, there was a huge amount of community support behind the rooftop solar panel project. So, it's good that we're talking about this publicly, getting the word out. I'll certainly be circling back to the people that I connected with a few years ago when we started talking about this I'll be looking for their input. And I hope we can, just take this slow and just take our time to hear from the community, because I do think that it's a huge positive statement to actually do an on-site installation of a significant size, because we're talking about 300 kilowatts here versus 5 or 6, which is your typical home installation. So it's a big project. A lot of people are very excited about it. I'd love to see us do both. It's kind of, if you're doing remote net metering, rather than go to Poughkeepsie, which isn't exactly known for its sun, you wonder if they couldn't put them down in Arizona. I guess it's the state boundaries that constrain us there. But yeah, I'm certainly very interested in the idea. They say Monolith guarantees that the savings experienced will be a minimum of 10%, and they say, i.e., the difference between remote net metering credit and price per kilowatt hour for Monolith. So our contract with Monolith guarantees that we'll be 25% below the prevailing utility rate, whether it fluctuates up and down, doesn't matter, they'll be 25% less. So they're saying there's an additional 10% savings if we go with the solar farm idea. So yeah, I think we need more information. I would certainly keep application on the table with SED and just,
There it sits, so it's not that it's been
but
pulled.
keep the pressure on and hope and work towards getting approval for that. That would be my suggestion.
I mean, here's a suggestion. I don't know what I wasn't around when we approved this originally, what everybody's excitement about the educational value of it, because I know a lot of this you can't see, and you're not going to go up there to see it, because you can't get there. So is it just more of a perception that there's a panel on the roof? Was that what got everybody excited? Or just the fact that we had solar? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I think they will be visible. You're not going to be, if you were up on Breakneck Ridge, I'm sure you get a great view of the whole thing, but most people aren't up there.
How about if, whoever from the board wants to participate and you guys could set something up and you guys could do a very detailed, thorough conference call or presentation or something, and you guys could just report back to us what you guys think?
I'd like to have them come here and do a presentation.
Would you like a presentation
Can
here
I?
at the board, at a
If
board
they want.
meeting?
That would be my preference.
Sure.
We had them here before to present on the building option.
Maybe they can come April 7th?
I will give them a call. Actually, they called yesterday to see how it was going, so I think they're very interested.
That's a business meeting, so it's not as detailed as probably the next one.
Is there a timeline? Do they need commitment from us about this farm idea anytime?
Well, I think they were saying
Soon?
if we do it soon, we will have it for the beginning of the school year. So it may be just a little bit later. I think they're going to jump on it. If we choose to go this direction, I think they're just going to jump on it and try to get it as quickly as they can.
So let's see if they can come and they can do their whole pitch and
Okay.
hopefully
I
the
will
sun's
do
out.
that.
Great. Okay. Communication from the public? Sure. Sure.
Can I go back to that?
Yep.
I've heard some talk about having a handout mentioned that the public about the 2.72 number versus the confusion about the 2% tax cap. And I just didn't hear whether that was actually going to happen. And I think it's so important to put that out to the public, to communicate what that actually means in plain English in some kind of handout. And I just wanted to know what the resolution was on that. Were you going to do that?
Yep.
Because I think we need to hear from you what that is, that you're not, raising taxes essentially.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. We also spoke of Dr. Bowers maybe doing a little video.
Right.
And there's already a stock video that is out there now that, I forgot who did it, that's
I
great.
think the handout's good.
Sure.
As opposed
Yep.
to having it embedded in a website where you have to go and, not everybody does that, but if you see it.
Yep.
in writing,
Yep.
Do you have a recommendation of where the handout should be? Because we were talking about doing it, I guess, well, I don't know, where were we talking about doing it? When should we give the handout? You know what I mean? Like when and where should that handout be given?
Well, it probably should be on the budget page of the website with all the other documents.
Right.
Then it could also be dispersed through a conversation like PTA, like Facebook, like hand it out when you go to wherever if you want.
Right.
Maybe just like at all the committee meetings, all
have
the
it available.
PTA
Sure.
meetings, it's just available.
And then we do a formal budget newsletter, which kind of goes out to everybody in the community, and that, would probably be part of that as
And
well.
that can be embedded.
just like one of the most important things.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Because people could vote no based on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Comment? Sure.
I guess a statement. Two statements. The first one is I was talking to my son. My name's Peggy Clements. I live in Nelsonville. I was talking to my son about his walk to school every day with all the snow, and he was talking about how hard it was. And when I asked him, well, what about the campus? He said the campus is totally clean. The campus is, looks great. And so I just wanted to hand out my kudos to all of the staff at the school who I know have had to work very hard for that to happen. And it's so important because our kids, our high schoolers, go up and down the hill so often. That was the first thing. The second thing is I just wanted to announce that I've picked up a packet from the district clerk, and I plan to turn it in. I'll be running for the Board of Education this year. I'm looking forward to that. And I've enjoyed attending these meetings and learning a lot about the process. It's really been very helpful in informing my decision.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for stepping up. And anyone else who wants to run for the school board, the deadline's April 20th at 5 o'clock, where you can pick up a packet of petitions. As we've said multiple times, Evan is running for re-election, and John Champlin and myself are not, so there's 2 open spots, and then Evan's re-election, so potentially 3 spots. So good candidates are always welcome.
And we just got a text, 34 seconds left for the boys' game, and the boys are winning 39-34. So.
Good. Great. Congratulations. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. New business, policy review. This is first reading for 6 different policies, which are all to some extent related. You want to give a context of this? And I would ask, does anybody want to take the lead on these and kind of be the lead reader and maybe summarize it back to us for the next time? We've done that in the past, and that's always been helpful.
What are you asking for, like summarizing the changes?
Well, I'll explain. The 6 policies that are there, they're all related to, most is related to technology and the use of technology and setting boundaries for the district. It's the acceptable use of digital technology, electronic communications and friending policy, information security breach, information technology access and security, staff use of computerized information resources, and Children's Internet Protection Act. And it's all about how we use or how we control the relationship between technology and the use on campus for both adults and children.
So if someone wants to take a lead on that, they can converse with Dr. Bowers probably by phone or in live, and maybe kind of just go through the scenario of why they came about, et cetera, and then report back. And that might be an efficient way to do it.
I'll do that.
You good? Okay. Any objections to Mrs. Daly taking the lead? No? Great.
Everybody's happy.
Are you sure?
I was going to nominate John, but John's not going to be here next meeting, so.
Yeah. No?
Thank you, Jen. We appreciate it. Anything else new from the board? And I just have one thing.
Boys won.
Good. Congratulations. So now I think they go to Long Island next, is the next round. And then after Long Island, I think they then go to the Final Four, which is in Glens Falls.
Yep.
Great. Just one thing. We had spoken about scheduling a date to do our superintendent evaluation. And given the complexities of everybody's schedules and all kinds of other things, I threw out an email to everybody this morning, which I think some of you saw. Tuesday, May 5th, 5:30 to 7, and then a follow-up Tuesday, May 12th. My other option was to do the whole thing on the 12th of May. 12th is not a board schedule, so it would just be like one long session. Dr. Bowers would be there for the first 90 minutes, and then we would kind of follow up on our own after that. So I'm figuring 2.5 hours total. We could do it over 2 days or do it all at once. John's flexible.
Well, the 90-minute meeting with Dr. Bowers is on May 5th?
Well, no, nothing's on yet.
Okay.
Either one or the other, May 5th or May 12th.
Right. So we could do May 5th, 5:30 to 7, then have our business meeting starting at 7. Then follow up on the 12th would just be us. Or option 2 was May 12th. We don't have a board meeting, but we would do an extended session, which is probably 2.5 hours.
Personally,
Meeting with Dr. Bowers and then meeting by ourselves?
Right.
Is that-
Those are the two options I came up with, other than, and I'm trying to get this done before I retire on May 19th, because I think it would just make sense. We all work together, and it makes sense to have all of us together.
Well, if you want to do that, then in order for you to sign it as the board president, it has to be signed by the 19th.
Right.
And doing, well, if we're gonna, based on the way we do it, is we talk about it, then we put it in writing, we email it out, and then we approve it. I guess you can sign it that night before the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
And
that's
the
good.
meet is going to be the first 2.5 hours.
I don't care. 5th or 12th is either way.
You
It's
want to
good
do it
with me.
that way? Pete, what do you think?
I'm fine either way. I mean, I'm kind of inclined to split it up the way you
Yeah.
did for option 1.
yeah, I personally think that's better, that in case there's something we need to think about or digest or,
Okay.
yeah.
So the 12th was?
Okay, so the 5th, 5:30 to 7, executive session. You'll be there for that. The 12th, and pick a time.
7.
You want to do 7? You want to do earlier?
I mean, whatever you guys want, 6:30, 7 is good with me. 7?
7 works.
Okay,
Yeah.
7.
And the 12th, 7 o'clock, just us. And we'll do it as long as we take it. That's an executive section. It's covered all under the law.
Okay.
How's
And
that
then
sound?
could we set up an executive session on the 19th to go over it
Sure.
with Dr. Bowers?
Yeah. And that would basically be a quick one at that
But we
point.
can actually do that early, because we usually do a late start, because we want to be here.
Yeah, I don't know if
That
we got,
meeting, we usually, like,
I don't think we got that far.
we have a
yet.
small agenda. I'm just saying, usually we have a small agenda, so we could do an exec session at 7:30.
Start late
Yeah.
because
And then
the
start the
election
meeting
is
at 8,
over till
yeah.
like 9:30, right?
All right,
We'll talk about
talk
that.
about the
But
19th.
the 19th is when we'll do the exec
We'll wrap it
session
up.
to go over it. Okay.
Okay. All right, so we're good on that? And I'll email everybody tomorrow morning. Just plug it in. Okay. Thank you. Anything else new? No? Okay. Any other communication?
I was taking an exam.
Oh, right, I'm sorry. The high school musical is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Pirates of Penzance, they have dual casts, so everybody participates, and Martha Mekalakis and everybody else does an amazing job on the musical. So everybody go, get your tickets at the door, and I highly suggest everybody make it, because they do a phenomenal job, and the kids are working like crazy. So thank you, Evan. Anything else?
Wish the kids well on the trip in New Orleans next week. They're leaving
Yep.
Monday night.
Yep. New Orleans on Monday. Anything else? Okay. Motion to adjourn? I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.